One of the things that really was exciting that developed this month is a pre-publication that the human genome sequence, the remaining percentage, has been mapped. This really is a remarkable advancement in genome sequencing. 20 years ago, you were on the team that founded and mapped out the original human genome. Can you talk a little bit more about this and this accomplishment?
Those were very, very exciting times. The International Human Genome Project got started in 1990, and it ended up consisting of 20 genome sequencing centers all over the world from different countries in different locations, all scientists that were determined to unveil this message and read our own genetic heritage for the first time. It ended up being a giant puzzle piece because the genome sequencing technology could only read very short pieces of the DNA message. A's, C's, T's, and G's may be a few thousand bases long, when in fact the entire genome is an enormous volume of 3 billion letters of A's, C's, T's, and G's, all strung out in a particular pattern that had to be unveiled painstakingly through this extraordinary work. Much of the technology had to be invented as we went along, and one of the things that ended up being critical is how to put together all these short pieces into coherent chromosomes so that we could then read the entire text. It's as if you had taken a major piece of work, Tolstoy's War and Peace, and shredded it up into tiny pieces. In order to make a coherent novel, one would have to put those pieces back together again. And it's interesting that there was a plan for this. It was supposed to happen in 2005, 15 years after the project began. But in fact, in the late 1990s, a new player emerged, a private company, Celera Genomics, who had a faster way of sequencing the genome. And they challenged the International Human Genome Project, the public effort, to a race, essentially, claiming that their technology was better and would be faster. And there was concern that we would have a privatized message. The plan was to charge a subscription fee to read the message, perhaps patent some of the genes. And a number of us felt that that would be inappropriate for something so profound as the very recipe, the genetic message of a human being. So we raced with the company Celera, and that was all encompassing crazy 24 hours a day madness during the years 1999 and 2000. And it came to a photo finish. Actually, one version of the human genome was assembled by a remarkable, brilliant student at UC Santa Cruz, Jim Kent, who had written the code to solve the puzzle pieces that were produced by the Public Genome Project and put them together into these long strings of A's, C's, T's, and G's that were the book of life encoded in our genome. And at the same time, another brilliant scientist, Gene Myers, had built a team that had assembled all of the pieces for Celera. And it was arranged that both of these first drafts of our human genome would be announced together in a ceremony at the White House on June 26, 2000. But my most vivid memory of that time was not the White House announcement, but on July 7th, we had the honor at UCSC, since Jim Kent had assembled the puzzle, of posting the human genome on the internet. Celera, of course, couldn't do that because it was protected intellectual property of theirs. But we, being the public effort, were free to share the message with all the peoples of the world. And that was a grand moment for me, I remember tears welling up in my eyes when I watched the A's, C's, T's, and G's go out over the internet. Here you had a message that had been carefully passed down from mom and dad to child for so long. And now it was actually being shared in a completely new medium, the electronic mediums of the computer and the internet, where everyone could read it in a new light, where we could understand it in a sense, rather than being the animal that is driven by it. We were now the being, the spirit that was actually seeing it and sharing it. That to me was the beginning of a radical collaboration. If you think about the tribal past of humanity, that was a radical change from being essentially slaves to our genome. Through the years, we became conscious, we created societies, we created technologies and science, we created ethics. We divorced ourselves from much of the brutal past, survival of the fittest, and the Darwinian world that nature had imposed. And we're creating a new world where we had a higher knowledge of who we are and could make our own choices about what our future could be. So I think reading our own message is a transformation for humanity. It's something that we can do together in an incredible new way, not being blind to this DNA that our ancestors gave to us, but celebrating it and sharing it and understanding that it is the root of our kinship.
That's a really optimistic way of phrasing that. And the optimism you speak to this understanding of this whole navigation and connection on this incredibly tiny level and its enormous means is really pretty infectious. And you're really optimistic about mankind.